Hi, this is Anita, the Global Trade Gal. As I mentioned many times, the global supply chain or working globally can be very complicated and sometimes very complex. It also is very rewarding. So I don't want people to think that it's not rewarding, especially if you're someone who loves the world, you love being international. It can be a great career and a great career choice. But one of the things that you need to really look at when you are working internationally is about culture. Working in the global supply chain usually means that you are working across cultures. It's not just about speaking different languages, but there's also values, there's traditions, there's ways of working, which can be ingrained in how basically people work or react to different things. And my own company, Mondoro, where we create, develop, and manufacture home decor products and home furniture products, we spent years cultivating relationships and trust with local artisans in Vietnam, China, and other parts of Asia. Because of this, you begin to have a deep understanding of the, even within Asia itself or different parts of Asia. Whether it's, Vietnamese lacquer, capri shell techniques or, Chinese bamboo weaving, we've had to learn to sort of immerse ourselves in the culture of these different areas to ensure that the craftsmanship is honored, respected, and preserved. We also understand at the same time that Western buyers, they're looking for something which works for them. They're not looking for something which, necessarily is a cultural item. They're looking for something which has the design and the quality that they require. So that's one of the things which we have done a lot of is we have turned artisan techniques into scalable products. One of the favorite things which I have always loved doing is to go into a factory and to see the products they're producing and then have this vision in my head of here's what they can do or here's how they can do it. I have always really loved that. I've always loved looking at traditional handicraft techniques and then saying, here's how we can change this technique and we can make it something which will be scalable and workable for the Western taste and Western market. Artisans, a lot of times they'll create one-of-a-kind pieces, but our job is to work closely with them and to be able to get them to be able to do larger scale production without compromising their soul and without compromising the design. Whether it's like things like, hand-applied gold and silver lift techniques in Vietnam. We have to really ensure that, the artists keep those techniques up while at the same time producing something which works for Western home or for the Western taste. You need to also learn to communicate. Communication can be hard, and there can be a lot of miscommunication going on. Or you may think that you read somebody one way and you read their culture and communication one way, but you really don't really understand where they're coming from. That there can be a lot of miscommunication across time zones, languages, and just, expectations. My team, at least that I have, is fluent, in English and local languages, and this allows them to be able to serve as connective, between the production team and international buyers, and even if I myself, native in a language, it's just not the same. There are so much cultural and local that goes on that you really need to be able to understand. That you need to sort of like be able to really sort of understand and listen to. So I think that that's also something which is, very, very, sort of like important. And they sort of feel that way too with me when it comes to dealing with the US, Europe, or the Western world. They'll defer to me. How should I write this? How should I say this? What should I do? Because they again, are very culturally sensitive. If it was their own culture and their own people, they'd understand exactly how to communicate and what to do. That really just goes to show that, when you work in the global supply chain, it's not just a matter of like, here's a product and I buy it at this price and then we pack it and we ship it and we send it over. There's a lot of other things that get involved, a lot of other cultural things that get involved with this all that you need to be able to understand along the way. Moving products from an artisan workshop in rural Asia to the retail floors in the US or Europe requires, deep understanding of the culture and the logistics at the same time. So you really have to be able to understand both of those things. Getting it off the floor, getting it packed, getting it the quality that you need, and being able to make sure it has the compliance that's needed and the cost effectiveness that's needed. Shipping from raw materials to, the production timelines. So, our experience in international shipping and, regional knowledge helps to be able to ensure this, helps to be able to ensure that we can ship the products in a timely manner, that we can build, contingency plans for quality control and checks through the entire manufacturing process. We like to believe and say that we have ethical manufacturing with a social conscience, that we really truly believe in having a social conscience, especially here in Asia. We try to bridge the local and the global, and we take great pride in upholding our social responsibility. We work with factories that adhere to fair labor practices, ensure safe conditions and safe working environments, and operate with environmental responsibility. This is not always easy. I admit it's not always very easy, but we try to do it as much as we can. We believe that ethical manufacturing is not just a selling point, but it should also be a responsibility. By educating our artisan partners about global compliance standards and helping them meet these standards, we empower them to grow their business ethically. And we really try to train. And I say to my team here, I say, we are trainers. I always really emphasize to them a lot about this. Don't underestimate the fact that you are a trainer. Even you go into a factory that's large and you think like, oh, they should be able to do everything. So many times we need to back away and say, no, we need to really educate and train them on what is required and what is needed. That we need to have a focus of being a trainer. And I really feel like a lot of people, when they're doing global sourcing or global manufacturing, they don't really see that. They just see, okay, you have a product I need, I'll buy it, that's it. But really, in order to get out the best product you can, at the best quality, the best price, and all the things that you need, many times you need to go with the view of a teacher or a trainer, even a little bit of a mentor. You need to go in with sort of that view in mind that, okay, the finish is not quite right, but let's work together on this finish and let's get it right. This isn't quite right in the manufacturing process, but let's work together and let's get this right. I honestly believe that people that go in with that attitude do far better than those who just say, not right, done, no more. We'd have nothing more to discuss. I believe that you need to go in and and that's part of the whole, ethical manufacturing is part of the social conscience, and it's also part of the entire process because there's, remember, you're dealing globally, you're bridging cultures as you're in the global supply chain. So there's so much that could go wrong just in the communication itself, just in how one person sees something versus another person sees something. So this is why it's really important that you learn to be able to bridge the culture and bridge the cultural divide and the cultural gap. Now, I think if somebody is really not interested in other cultures and thinks that their culture is number one and they're maybe in the global supply chain may not be the best career choice for you. Really, someone who's in there should be a little bit more culturally focused and want to understand, because if you go in with that view and with that vision, it will help you a lot long run. We've written a blog post about this that we'll put in the description, from local to global, how we bridge cultures through home decor manufacturing. So if you'd like to read a little bit about some case studies and other things that we discuss in this, we'll put a link in the description below in case you'd like to be able to check it out. But hopefully this gives you some ideas and some understanding of why, when you're in the global supply chain, you need to also not just look at just the product, but also look at other things, which has to do with bridging the culture and the cultural divide. This is Anita, the Global Trade Gal. If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd appreciate if you give us a thumbs up, recommend it to other people, and, leave a review. It really does help. We appreciate you, our listeners. Thank you.